Hello, my name is Samuel Hernandez, and today I'll be sharing with you my cultural informative topic. Now, imagine this. It's a beautiful spring day in April of 2019. After having worked so hard, you're finally on that Paris vacation you've always wanted, and today promises to be a day full of excitement and cultural sights. However, as you embark on your first excursion with your tour group, you are barraged by the sounds of sirens. As you approach your destination, you start to hear the nervous murmurs of the gathering crowd. Once you arrive, you finally catch sight of what has caused this abrupt halt to your day. You watch as tendrils of flame crawl up the majestic monolith before you. You look around and see onlookers, both Parisian and tourist alike, watch in morbid fascination as the once great Notre-Dame Cathedral is engulfed in flames. For the past 2 years now, that has been the story of Notre Dame. But today, I'll be sharing with you the real story of Notre Dame Cathedral, as well as be discussing its great cultural and historical significance. Now, for many people, this event came to as a shock, especially the French, who, according to the World Monuments Fund, had incited from an outpour of pledges amounting in sums ranging from hundreds to hundreds of thousands of euros in order to rebuild. Now, if you're a Francophile like myself, or just an overly exuberant fan of the 1996 Disney film, this event likely caught your attention and left you wondering after this great building's fate. For the purposes of today's speech, I'll be separating my presentation into three parts. First, I'll be looking at the history of Notre-Dame de Paris. Second, we'll be looking at and discussing the events of the fire, as well as its aftermath. And lastly, I will conclude by dissecting the cultural relevance of Notre-Dame, as well as its relevance today. Now, to begin, we are going to start with the history of Notre Dame. In order to do so, we must first look at when it was constructed. Now, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, the Notre-Dame de Paris began construction in 1160, where reportedly the first brick was laid by then Pope Alexander III himself. Now, this was a highly tumultuous project, construction of the Notre Dame having lasted well over 100 years to complete, resulting in a marvel of medieval art and architecture. Now, Notre-Dame de Paris stands at the heart of Paris, and, also according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, is reportedly built upon the ruins of two prior churches and is once a spot where a great temple to Jupiter once stood, marking it as a sacred and spiritual place for the people of Paris. Next, while this building has been around for centuries, it hasn't always been afforded the same grandeur and has endured a lot of France's history. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, Notre Dame has lasted through all three of France's revolutions, as well as been the place where Napoleon Bonaparte had crowned himself emperor. Now, despite its audacious beginnings, it was not always looked on with the same favor, and eventually began to fall into disrepair. But sometime during the 19th century, there was a pickup in public outcry for reconstruction, and according to Jose Fernandez from the Journal of Comparative Literature, this could be attributed to Victor Hugo's work, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which caused an outpour of public sentiment in support of reconstructing this once famous building. Not only that, it allowed for Notre Dame de Paris to be cemented in Paris's culture and history. Now that we have gone over the origins and history of Notre Dame, we will be looking at the events of the fire itself. Now, according to the Friends of Notre Dame de Paris website, renovations on Notre Dame were already underway prior to the fire, particularly on its northern spire, and it is speculated that this might have had something to do with how the fire originally started. Now, once the fire started, there was a lot of panic and great fervor in order to try to get the relics that were kept there out. According to Vivian Wall from Time magazine, during the fire, both firefighters and conservators from the monument were rushing out and trying to preserve the relics of this religious site. Such relics include the very crown of thorns reportedly worn by Jesus himself. Now that I have gone over the events of the fire, we will be looking at the aftermath. According to Jason Baxter from America Magazine, there was rapid response from the French government, especially from the president, Nathaniel Macron, who is cited saying that reconstruction of the Notre-Dame de Paris will be underway and will be complete in no longer than 5 years. However, Since then, he has received roadblocks from his government. However, he is not the only one pursuing its renovation. According to Emily Conover from Science News, following the burning, French scientists formed a coalition known as the Association of Scientists in Service of the Notre-Dame de Paris in order to investigate and help aid in the reconstruction of Notre Dame. Now that we have reviewed the events of the fire, we will move on to the last section of the speech to discuss this magnificent cathedral's cultural significance. First, we will be looking at its role as a cultural tourist site. According to American Magazine, Notre Dame Cathedral is one of the most visited monuments in the world, surpassing even the pyramids of Giza. According to France Today, in 2017, 12 million people visited this monument alone. Now, beyond just its value as a tourist spot, we will be also looking at the role it plays as a part of France's religion and culture. According to Jason Baxter from American Magazine, Notre-Dame de Paris is a touchstone of many medieval works and artwork, and has been a time capsule for a lot of these great pieces, especially the stained glass windows that have beautiful religious depictions. And now, while times have become more secular since its construction, this place has also managed to serve as a way for France to connect its future to its past. According to the Friends of Notre-Dame de Paris, after the fire, there was a lot of great debate as to how it would be reconstructed. Ultimately, this debate concluded that they would be deciding to preserve the Notre-Dame de Paris in its most recent and complete state, in order to preserve its medieval grandeur and majesty. This now brings us to the end of my presentation. In conclusion, over the course of this speech, we have gone over the history of Notre Dame, the events of the fire and its aftermath, as well as dissected its cultural relevance. Now, I hope today I have opened your eyes and you feel as if you know Notre Dame in a more intimate way than before. This building has lasted for centuries and is a time capsule and great marker of both French and European culture. While we know nothing lasts forever, it is certain that it is both awe-inspiring and humbling to see how this monument has endured for centuries, and who knows, perhaps it will even last longer than we will. Thank you.